I hurt one of my closest loved ones this past year. I actually wanted to start this by saying we got in a bad disagreement or a fight. But part of my reflecting on it makes me realize that acknowledging, in fact, that I hurt them is more the truth. How did it happen? I think the way these things unfortunately often do. I was busy with my own stuff. I was being self-involved. I was not at my best. I was not doing well. And I made some choices, or rather, didn't bother to think intentionally and act and make the right choices. And I hurt this loved one through thoughtlessness. I don't know about each of you, but this past second pandemic winter was especially hard on me. My partner was gone for half of it on sabbatical, and I was here in London alone, working hard, feeling sorry for myself. The Omicron variant raging outside our doors, and many of us hunkering down yet again, unable to enjoy a cozy collective winter life together, the way I realized I now so needed. And I got sad, and I got self-involved, and then I didn't think about the feelings of others. It's so classic it could be part of the Alchet English readings, the way I hurt someone I loved because I was too wrapped up in my own sadness. The way we can hurt those we love when we're too wrapped up in our own stuff. At this time of year, we focus on doing teshuvah, on returning to our best selves, and returning, if we can, to those we have wronged. And interestingly, as we said a moment ago, there are two traditional Torah readings for this day of teshuvah, for Rosh Hashanah. One for the first day today, in which we just read the story of Hagar. Her son Ishmael is cast out, it seems, to die. His mother Hagar is isolated and pleading for the second time in her life, in fact, in the wilderness, now watching her child almost die. And when Hagar comes to this harrowing ordeal, she is the only person in the whole Torah, in the bit right after where we stopped reading, to name God, to come up with a name that she gives God, a name that she creates. She calls God, very shortly later on in our Torah portion, Atah El Roi, meaning perhaps, you God, see me. Atah El Roi, you God, see me. According to the British liberal rabbi and my teacher, Eli Tikva, this astounding fact that only one person, a woman, a non-Israelite, maligned by our founding patriarch and matriarch, whose story one could argue is a side story to our Jewish one. After all, Ishmael, our son, goes on to found the Ishmaelites. And in both Islamic and Jewish tradition, this gives rise to the Arab tribes from which the early Muslims were descended. So this person, Hagar, names God. And what's more, she not only names God, but she names God's central characteristic, Atah El Roi, you God see me. That is, the divine sees and witnesses. The divine has seen and witnessed her. Perhaps this can teach us that our individual struggles for meaning are integral to our collective evolution and story. And they are here so in Hagar's case. And bear with me, there is an even wilder postscript to follow, because once before this story we read today, Hagar was driven out by Abraham and Sarah, and she named the place to which she was driven. She really is a powerful namer. She named that place Be'er Lachai Roi, meaning the well of life in which I am seen. And remember, we said there are two stories we read on Rosh Hashanah. This story about Hagar, and then tomorrow, traditionally on the second day, we read the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, about how Ishmael's brother, Isaac, is almost sacrificed on a mountaintop by their father Abraham. An absolutely unforgettable and distressing and central story for our high holidays. I want to draw our attention to the bit right after, because after it's all over, the Akedah and the chaos, and father and son have come through the ordeal unscathed, at least physically. 2 chapters later, the next mention of Isaac, that other son of Abraham, it says, Yitzchak ba nibo be'er l'chai ro'i. Isaac came back from a place called be'er l'chai ro'i, the well of life in which I'm seen. So he was in the same place for some reason later on, where Hagar in this family saga was once cast out to die. It never explains, why does Isaac go here after such a dramatic fallout, after such a threat to his very being? Rabbi Shai Held suggests 3 reasons why Isaac might have gone to Hagar's place, but somehow might help us with this underlying theme of our teshuvah, our return. So the first option, perhaps Isaac seeks comfort from one that has experienced something similar. He, in some way, when the Akedah was cast out by his father, Hagar also cast out by his father, looking for comfort and shared experience. Secondly, and interestingly, he may also now understand and be seeking to comfort Hagar. And finally, maybe he too is needing to find that the existence of a living, kind reality in which we are seen, of the Be'er L'chai Ro'i, this place where the divine witnesses are penned. So somehow the tradition is telling us, even what we think of as this central struggle of Isaac, what one might call our collective Jewish story, is linked to this story of Hagar today. Her marginalization, her experience, her agency, her voice, and her ability to name places and to name the divine influences Isaac, Abraham's other son, and her own son Ishmael's half-brother. Of all the ideas for why Isaac returns after his own harrowing ordeal to a place Hagar too experienced grief, I love this idea that it wasn't perhaps to comfort her or to be comforted. And I think perhaps this is the heart of teshuvah. Somehow being able to see the other, the person in front of you, more and more clearly. When I hurt my loved one this past winter, Maimonides' teachings on teshuvah on this were very much on my mind. Maimonides says that when you have wronged someone, you must apologize 3 times. Why 3? I had always wondered. Well, in my experience, the first time I said sorry, I didn't understand what I had done wrong. It was too recent. I was too muddled in my own actions, still too much in the mindset in which I had made the mistake myself. By waiting to apologize again a second time, I was forced to move into understanding more of what I had done wrong, and to understanding it from the perspective of the other person. Well, and then why the 3rd time? I think because then the one who is wronged, and this is a teaching for all of us when we ourselves are wronged, they have to try to start themselves too to forgive, whether they want to or not. That 3rd time, as angry as that person is, the one who is wrong has to try to find it in themselves to forgive. This teaches me, even sometimes when we are incredibly angry, if someone has honestly tried 3 times, or the symbolic equivalent of, to approach us for forgiveness, there is something in that act itself that demands answer from us. It's very easy to hold a grudge. it's much harder to be open to forgiveness. And perhaps that is what the Jewish tradition is trying to teach us today, by interweaving these two seemingly disparate stories, one about the boy Isaac, who had everything, who would be the founder of the Jewish people, and one about Hagar, who seems in the moment we met her in our story today to have very little. But it is seen that Hagar's naming teaches us twice that the divine is important because the divine can see us in our suffering and in our pain. And Isaac too is able to find comfort in that teaching, or perhaps find comfort in fellow seeing, in seeing another and being seen by another human being, in comforting a fellow person in sorrow. And that we must be able to see the pain and hurt of others. That is what makes us like the divine, Ata El Roi, you God who sees. But we must be able to see like this divine in order to forgive and be forgiven. Enough of that.